And we are live. JT here. Welcome to The Huddle. The Huddle is where I sit down with successful people from the world of sport and coaching. It's to learn more about their journey to greatness. Why do I have these conversations? Because success always leaves clues. I want to take a moment to thank you. Whether you are watching our conversation on Facebook or on YouTube, or whether you're listening to the audio on the podcast, thank you so much for being here with me and my special guest today. And here's my friendly reminder to you. The mind is like a parachute. It works best when it's wide open. So my challenge to you is to go all in on this conversation, to remove any distractions and get laser focused on the here and the now. And I guarantee you, you will gain a valuable nugget of wisdom that will not only help you succeed in sport, but more importantly, in the game of life. I've been looking forward to my conversation with my special guest today. We had the opportunity to meet while on vacation. And you know, one of the beauties about vacation is, you know, it opens you up to new surroundings. You get to meet lots of fun and interesting people. And I think our relationship and how it started really highlights that. My guest in the huddle today is Lorne Miller. How are you today, brother?
I'm so great, thanks. And thanks so much for the opportunity to get together and spend some more time together and continue the wonderful conversations that we had a month or so ago when we met in Mexico.
Absolutely, brother. And before we get kicked off, pun intended, I just want to take a moment to count my blessings. You know, I'm a big believer that the biggest blessing you can give anyone is your time and your energy. So I just want to thank you again for blessing me with some of your time and energy here today.
Yeah, likewise, that the feeling is more than mutual on that for sure. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. It's going to be great.
Absolutely. So one of the first things that I like to do in the huddle is to remind others and myself, more importantly, that life is a game and games are supposed to be fun. So I'm curious, what's an interesting fact? I had a coaching and teaching colleague that always used to remind us that, hey, we all have these things that make us unique and different, so celebrate it. So I'm curious, what's an interesting fact that maybe a lot of people don't know about you that you'd be open to sharing with our community today?
Geez, that's an interesting fact. Well, one thing that I do take a lot of heat over when we talk about sports and teams and all that sort of stuff is I'm a born and raised Calgarian, and I am an avid Edmonton Oilers fan. So, you know, as the Oilers advanced in the Stanley Cup playoffs and the Flames, unfortunately didn't make it this year, I'm kind of, you know, an island in a lot of ways in Calgary. There's not too many Oilers fans kicking around, but the further they go, the more fans seem to pop up, which is okay. I'm always very welcoming to anyone else that wants to join me. But, you know, for living in Calgary, Edmonton's gone through some pretty painful years over the last few decades, I guess I could say. So yeah, it's been a long time coming, and I'm glad to see they have an opportunity to be successful this year in the playoffs, and it's a fun time to watch them and a fun time to be a fan of them.
Awesome. I love that. My brother-in-law is a big hockey guy. My nephew's a big hockey guy as well. And he, as I was mentioning while we were on vacation, grew up just 2 hours north of Edmonton. So big diehard Oilers fan. So I see more of these connections, these common connections seem to just pop up more and more the more we talk.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay. So I'm curious, you know, you mentioned that, you know, you're a diehard Oilers fan, you know, so it's obviously, you know, very evident that sport and physical activity has played an important role for you in your life. So I'm curious, what is a life lesson you've taken away from sport or physical activity that you find yourself still applying to your life today? And I'll preface it by saying, I know there are many, but what is one that really resonates with you?
Yeah, so something I learned, I'm not a lifelong, I grew up playing hockey. I stopped, you know, in my early adult years once I learned I wasn't going to play for the Oilers. But one of the early lessons that I learned in sports that has transitioned throughout my career and, you know, personally and professionally is the intense value of teamwork. I've never been, the most skilled player on any team that I've ever been on. I've only been, I've been on these teams because of hard work, and I'm a career firefighter here in Calgary, and the reinforcement of the value of teamwork in that line of profession has been huge for me too. Again, I don't consider myself the most technically skilled firefighter out there, but I know my role on scene, and I execute that as best I can and rely on others to do their jobs as well. And that goes with sport. Referencing again the Edmonton Oilers, not everybody on the Edmonton Oilers can be Connor McDavid. There's other people that are there that aren't as well known and aren't as flashy, but they're still there. They're still on that team, and they're still pulling in the same direction. Mm-hmm. And I think and I'm just such a huge fan of teamwork. And as I face some of my personal challenges the last couple of years, I have again been reminded of the intense value of teamwork, and how if we all focus on what our own individual roles are within that team, the collective good of the entire group is much greater, right? So I love teamwork. I love sharing the workload. I love sharing the successes. I love leaning on each other in the tough times, and just trying to push across that finish line, whatever it may be, again, personally, professionally, or in sport. Teamwork is one of my favorite things of life, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. I love that, brother. And I appreciate you sharing that. And again, I know I mentioned it before we came on, but I just want to thank you for being of service, especially in the fire services. So thank you for being of service, brother.
Yeah, no problem. It's such an honor, and I'm so thankful and grateful for the opportunity to to serve people on a lot of times what is the worst day in their life. My job, or our job as a team, is to go in there and try to make that that day a little less worse, and offer some support, whatever that can be. Sometimes it's pretty urgent, obviously, and we just go out there and do our best as a team collectively to try and make the problems go away for those people, or reduce them for sure.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, you mentioned teamwork, and I love that, right? Like, and I think of that John Maxwell quote, like, teamwork makes the dream work, right? And that's one of my favorite, reminders about the importance of teamwork. So I'm curious, you are in a vocation where it is a matter of life or death. And sometimes you are dealing, like you referenced, like on people's worst days. From your experience, I'm sure you've worked with many strong and powerful leaders in fire services. Have you seen, people that have a background in sport? Do you find that they understand the value of being a great teammate? Like, is it something that's a little bit more embedded in their DNA?
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's been a lot of transition over the years from, kind of professional athletes from professional sports groups into, the fire service, just because for me as well, I was never a professional athlete, but I always gravitated to sort of those teamwork environments. And this was a natural transition to do that. And we see that time and time again. We've got lots of pro athletes. I mean, you're a football guy. We just had, one of the best CFL kickers in history join the Calgary Fire Department, right? And he understands the value of teamwork, right? So it's incredibly powerful when we can all work together in these trying times. And sports, when we get to those pinnacle of sports and games and stuff like that, that's highly stressful and highly arousal activities, right? And again, that transitions into the emergency services, right? So there's a lot of carryover between that teamwork lifestyle mentality in dealing with those stressful circumstances, and sharing the joys of victory, and again sharing the workload in those harder times, right? And one of the great things I've learned along the way, whether you're in a team sport or an individual sport, the reality is nobody wins alone, right? And that's a quote from Mark Messier, who was one of the great Edmonton Oilers and New York Rangers. And I couldn't agree with that more. Whether you're an individual, dealing with somebody or something, sports related or personal related or work related, no matter what your successes are, nobody wins alone, right? And I think that's just such a powerful statement. And when we realize, the collective power of, a group behind us, or a whole mass of people pulling in the same direction, gosh, we can sure accomplish much more than, a single individual trying to go out there and do stuff.
I love what you shared. And again, it reminded, the power of, identifying a vision or a goal, something greater than you. Right. And I think anyone that's ever been on a strong and powerful sport team knows like that. And I love how you reference that idea that, the power of being on a strong team is that there are times where you're going to help elevate those around you, and there are going to be times where those around you are going to elevate you. So again, it's kind of one of those, the beauty of the song and dance of being on a strong and powerful team.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, like I said, that translates into everyday life. You don't have to be, on a high performance sports team or a high performance athlete to reap the benefits of being on a good team. I mean, I'm in a, I was on, successful sports teams growing up. I'm in a team-based environment now in the fire department.
Mm-hmm.
And socially, I have an incredible, social network that is a team in my opinion as well, that helps me carry me through my day-to-day challenges. Right. So, teamwork is a concept and something that you can do and develop into every aspect of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said before, I find it just makes you, it makes the workload a lot lighter when you can spread it amongst other people. And I'm the first to admit that I certainly don't know everything. So I always love being a part of teams where other people have different skill sets and backgrounds and knowledges that I can learn and grow from. And when we're facing certain challenges, whatever those may be, those people can be really relied on for their skill sets to to help get the team over that next hurdle, whatever it may be.
I love what you share there, and you talk about skill sets, and one thing that I've really come to appreciate of being on strong, powerful teams is to be an effective leader, you have to have some level of awareness of what your unique gifts, your talents, and your abilities are. And then also have sort of this calm and confidence in your own skin that you can surround yourself with people who have other unique gifts, talents, and abilities, and realize that together, right, 1 + 1 actually could equal 11.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious, one of the things that, again, I was mentioning to you when we first, before we got live, just how that day we met in the pool. And one of the things that really drew me to our first conversation was just hearing some of your journey to greatness. So I know in 2021, you were given sort of a curveball. So I'm curious if you would be open to sharing some of your curveball in 2021.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. So to back it up a step further. So I've been with the fire department since for 15 years now, since 2007. They've been an incredible team-based network for me, on and off the job, and for my family. It's a really wonderful community to be a part of. And in May of 2021, so we're approaching 2 years ago now, I was living, what I thought was my best life. I was healthy. I was active. We have 2 young kids. They were, 2 and 5 at the time, so very young. And yeah, I was feeling a little bit of discomfort in kind of my abdomen area. And after speaking to a good friend of mine that I grew up with and met through playing hockey, he's now an ER doctor in the Toronto area. He recommended that I go to the hospital to get that checked out. He kind of thought it was along the lines of a hernia or something like that, but over text, it's hard to diagnose some things, right? So turns out WebMD is not always the most accurate way to go. But anyways, so after speaking to him, he directed that I should maybe go to the local emergency department to get checked out. Long story short, I went in there, I had some tests, some scans, all that sort of stuff. And they found a tumor in me that was about the size of a cantaloupe. So sort of right in my abdominal area there. And obviously, pretty serious situation right away. I was totally asymptomatic. Like I said, living my best life. I was setting personal bests on workouts and all that sort of stuff. And then to go from that one day to literally the next to say, you've got a rare and very aggressive cancer that's growing pretty fast inside you, and we're going to have to do some serious interventions to keep you around. That was a pretty significant, curveball for our family and our community, and at that time. But one of the things that I learned almost immediately after those initial conversations was that this was way bigger than me. So I immediately got that information, immediately put my hand up and said, I'm going to need a lot of help helping deal and navigate with this. And I immediately started building my team of people that were at my table to help carry us, through this journey that is still ongoing as we speak.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, I can only imagine, what's going through your mind as, you're navigating this news, right? This sort of change in your reality. I'm curious, you've been blessed to professionally, you've been put in these situations, right? So I'm curious, like, what's going through your mind as you're dealt sort of this new hand? Like, what? Yeah, I'd love to know. Just walk me through kind of how you
Yeah,
even
for sure.
begin to navigate that.
Yeah. It was a quite crazy and wild time. And I remember being in the OR room or the emergency room and talking to the doctor, and she gave me that news. And obviously when you hear that news, that something that big is growing within you, and you're not 7 months pregnant, it's pretty big shock, right? So, I actually was on the phone I called my friend who's a doctor in Toronto. This was the middle of the night. He answered, and I got him to talk to the doctor just to sort of relay that information, because when you hear that kind of stuff, like everything just goes numb, and you're instantly overwhelmed. So he sort of helped, process some of that initial information for me. And it was interesting because in relating this back to my professional life as a firefighter, we often deal with people on their very worst day of their life, right? And you can see that look in their face when you give them that life-altering news and life-changing news. And at this point, I was the one who had received that news, right, from the doctor. I was all of a sudden on the other side of the table receiving that life-changing news and trying to react to that accordingly. My thoughts went from instantly to, obviously this is a big deal. I'm in some serious trouble here, to, how do I communicate this back to my family? I had a wife and two young kids at home that were, waiting for me to come home, and how am I going to communicate that to them? And that it was such a weird time, because that gap of space between when I knew that information and they didn't, and the headspace I was in, knowing that their lives and others in my close circle are going to change forever as I start delivering that news, was a really tough spot to be in, right? It's tough because people are going about their regular everyday business, and I've got this bombshell that I'm actually absolutely going to drop on people, and it's going to change their lives, right? So yeah, it was really tough, but again, the value and impact of teamwork. As soon as I sort of put that red flag up for help, we were surrounded by an incredible team of medical professionals, my fire department family, my social network, my community, and strangers that we didn't even know, to say, we're here to help you, and we're here to stay, and we're here to help you navigate this entire process. And like I said, we're still doing that today. So that is the ultimate example of teamwork, right, in the most dire of situations.
Again, brother, thank you again for being so open to sharing your journey. And it was interesting because one of the things that I really heard when you first said was, one of the first things you did was, I need some help, right? I need some help navigating it. So I really just want to take a moment to acknowledge you for having the courage to ask for help, because I would have, I think from my own perspective, I feel like it probably would have been really easy to go within and just sort of like deal with it yourself. So again, I just want to acknowledge you for having the courage to ask for help. So I'm curious, being able to be vulnerable and say, hey, I need some help and support with that. How important was that as you have navigated this process over the last couple of years?
Well, it's critically important, and I'll be quite open and quite real with you here. Is if I didn't do that, there's a very real possibility that I simply wouldn't be here, right? So that's the reality, and the kind of the fine line that we're walking in this situation. And to instantly know and be aware that this is, like I said, bigger than me, and I'm going to need to get as many resources and people on my team as soon as possible was critical. And that's one of the things that I took away from the Getting to Neutral book, is that you are responsible for building your own team outside of that sport, right? So we need to build this team full of medical experts, professional experts, psychological experts, all those social experts, all those things, what I mean? And I'm in charge of that, what I mean? I'm the one taking responsibility of that and building that team. And like I said, that was absolutely and is absolutely critical to my survival, right? So yeah, it was incredibly powerful to learn and realize and acknowledge that you're in a real battle here. And although, kind of I'm the focal point in the center of that, and I'm the one that's in the ring, I still have the ability to build, a massive support network outside that ring that's going to be cheering us on and helping us get through these crucial checkpoints as we continue to move forward.
And You bring up an interesting point, because one thing I heard from you was, you made a decision, like you sort of became, like, for giving you a sport analogy, the GM of your life, right? Where you started,
Yep.
like, who do I need to surround myself with? And it
Yep.
sounds like you were very intentional with surrounding yourself with people who had specialized knowledge, as Napoleon Hill
Yep.
talks about, like people who actually can help and support you. Because I always find there's this delicate balance in life, because it's really easy at times to surround ourselves with people who have opinions, and everyone, opinions are like belly buttons. Everyone's got one, right?
Yeah.
But especially during, a life altering time, it's
Yeah.
really important that we surround ourselves with people who, have that specialized knowledge that can keep us at neutral.
Yeah.
Was that your experience as well?
Absolutely. And I've also explored the concept of, the fixed versus growth mindset, right? And that's something that's really, proven to help me continue moving forward as well. When we say the fixed mindset, it's people are just sort of, this is, I don't know why this is happening to me. Why me? Poor me. This is just my situation. We'll see how it plays out. And I don't subscribe to that. I'm more of the growth mindset personality where, I think you have a lot of control over your situation. And despite, sometimes experts saying you may or may not have a lot of control or say in that, but I think, there's always opportunities to grow and get better. And, so I really took it upon myself to surround myself with people that shared that growth mindset. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because, prior to all this happening, you look on paper, these are the people that are going to be on my team. Right. And then when you actually get into that battle and things are getting really thick and heavy, it's not always the same people that you wrote down on the paper. And I acknowledge that that's okay. That I accept that that's okay, that it's different people that are there, because like we said at the beginning of our conversation, I really feel that the right people are in front of you at the right time. And I just want to make sure, when you're building a team like that, there has to be a little bit of selfishness there, because I'm in a life or death situation here, and I need people that are surrounding me to be, sort of filling my bucket up per se and helping me rather than taking away from me. So I was pretty deliberate in, the people that I surrounded myself with personally, professionally, medically, all those people, to make sure that they were pulling in the right direction and we were truly on the same team, which was my team in trying to keep me alive. And it's been incredibly powerful, and so many great lessons along the way. And like I said, one of the big things is you really have to take that responsibility, right? I had to take responsibility for my own health, and know that, despite the doctor saying, that this is just bad luck and it just sort of happened to you. I don't necessarily subscribe to that. So I had to take a, really intense self audit of my life, and what are some of the contributing factors that maybe did get me sick, right? And reevaluate and change those, right? So that's just that growth mindset, and taking responsibility for your situation, and for how you're going to take responsibility for it moving forward too, right? There's a ton of good things in there. And then again, orchestrating that team around you, to build you up and make sure you're successful in whatever you do, and putting your best foot forward every time.
I love that. And what I really heard from you again is the power of, flexing your perception muscle, right? It's one of those higher conscious faculties, those mental muscles. And it's interesting that, it's many people have been programmed with this belief that life is happening to them, right? That there are things like, it's just luck. It's all this jazz, where then I think as we start to dive into personal growth, self-development, I think of my own journey, I start to realize, no, life's happening for me.
Yep.
Right. And then you start to look for the opportunities. And then I had a great coach that actually said, no, life is actually happening through you. Right. Like you always have that opportunity, like you were referencing to, hey, this is the fact. What choices can I make moving forward to better this situation? So I love kind of, you talked about perception.
Well, totally. And, these are such such tough times, and suffering is difficult, right? But we have to realize that, with great suffering and great difficulties comes great wisdom, right? So being able to really lean into those situations and acknowledge that this is going to make you a better person. And in difficult situations, people often try to find the easy way out, and try to kind of hide and shield from the storm and avoid it. When you're face to face with your own mortality and a difficult cancer diagnosis, you can't hide from that, right? There's no way you can call in sick that day and get around it. There's only way is to face it head on, right? So, I learned from, some of my teammates that I've surrounded myself with, that this is going to be, one of the most challenging things that I'm going to deal with, but it's also going to provide me with some of the best life lessons that are available, right? So leaning into those lessons and leaning into those challenges and facing them head on has brought me some of the most incredible peace as we sit here and talk today, and really learned and taught me some of the most valuable life lessons to look at life. I now view life through a completely different lens that I did 2 years ago as we have this conversation, right? So it's been a wild and incredibly difficult journey that I wouldn't necessarily wish for other people, but the value that I've gotten out of it and the growth that I've had from this has been remarkable, right? And for that part of it, I am thankful and grateful for sure.
Mm. And I really want to take a moment just to acknowledge you for that one, like, being able to be thankful and grateful for the experience, because it has helped you become the strong and powerful man you are today, right? So it's a great reminder of the power of perspective. So I'm curious, you talked about, through these challenges, this adversity, these obstacles, you've actually gained a lot of, you've been able to sort of harvest some wisdom from these life lessons. What would you say has probably been the thing you've taken most away from it? Obviously beyond just, having a different appreciation for life.
Yeah, one of the things that I've really learned is, your fears can be used as an ally in the development of your life, right? Because we're always afraid of, we have these fears about whether it's public speaking, heights, whatever, uncomfortable situations. People are afraid of being uncomfortable, but if we step into those places of uncomfort and discomfort, that's where the most personal growth really, really happens, right? So the things that you're afraid of can really help you build up into a person that you never thought you could have been, mentally and physically, right? So if you spend a lot of time in uncomfortable places, mentally and physically, you're eventually going to get stronger, right? More resilient, again, mentally and physically, right? To face whatever challenges are next. And that's one of the things that I've really learned and really sort of taken from this is to not sort of shy away from the challenges that come, is to lean in and learn those lessons. And I've also really learned, the value of front loading your life, with mental and physical work before stuff goes wrong, right? So I had my first diagnosis, about 2 years ago, and that was a big shock to my system and my family and everyone around us. I had a successful surgery and we took the tumor out. By the time I was taken out, it was about the size of a volleyball. So it was pretty massive. And, you saw me, I'm a pretty thin and lean person. To hide that in a 175-pound frame is pretty difficult. But once it was out, I kind of started recovering and I started learning some of these tough lessons. And I really sort of said, in some really difficult conversations with my doctor, I can share, some of the tough decisions that we had to make. One of them was around, do we do follow-up chemotherapy after the surgery? And that's a tough decision to make, because when, you get diagnosed with something like this, you want to look at the experts and say, what do I do? You know what I mean? And you hope there's this magic pill that's going to make you all better. And one of the things I've learned in this is, especially for my cancer specifically, there's no magic pill. And there's also no magic pill for life, right? It's a combination of a ton of different things that are all sort of pulled together to give you this, successful life, whatever your definition is of that. But one of the difficult situations I found myself in was the chemotherapy options for my type of cancer are typically fairly unsuccessful. And so the doctor sort of presented me with the situation that, okay, we've got all the cancer out of you. We can't see anything else in there. You're good right now. Do you want to do this follow-up treatment? The only caveat being, my cancer is pretty rare. So the only caveat with that being, we can give you this chemotherapy, but I don't have research or data to say whether or not it's going to help you. I know it's going to hurt you because I know what this stuff does to your system, but I can't tell you if it's going to help you. And then he kind of said, left it on our table to decide on that. And that's a really tough decision, knowing, what those drugs are going to do to your body, right? So, after lots of conversations, he's a wonderful, oncologist that I work with, and he would take time for me all the time to circle and go around these conversations time and time again. And at the end of the day, with my wife Lindsay and his conversations, we decided that the best option for me at that point was to not have the treatment and to pursue building myself back mentally and physically as best I can into a version, that I've never reached before. And that would, provide me with, a good base for if I had to, deal with this disease again, right? So that's the decision we ultimately made, was to go and build myself up into a version that I never had imagined before, mentally and physically. And unfortunately, as I think I had a recurrence last November. But when I went into that, I was so ready to go and ready to fight, that it was almost a non-issue. I mean, that the surgery where I went in for was incredibly invasive. It was the same as the first one. They open you up from your pelvis to your sternum. You saw my scar. It's big, it's long, it's ugly, right? So, and then, and my bounce back from that surgery was absolutely incredible, because I took the opportunity to front load my life mentally and physically and do the hard work. I put the hard work in beforehand. I knew that when I faced this challenge, it was going to be very, very manageable, right? From all the pre-work that I had done. So that's one of the other big lessons that I learned in this situation is don't wait to have to do all the hard work for when you're in the fight. If you preload that beforehand, things are much better off, when you step into that ring later down the line, because I've also learned that nobody is immune to the challenges of life. We're all going to face that at some point. But what is different between, varying people is how much work you've done beforehand to be ready for that fight, right? And that's up to the individual, and that's their choice.
Again, so powerful, brother. Like, again, I love like this analogy of, you were putting in all these, reps, focused reps and sets, right? To build yourself, your physical body, mentally, right? Spiritually, emotionally, like to be able to, just build another, just stronger, more powerful. And I love how you talked about that when you were given another curveball, you just like, yeah, I got this. Like it wasn't even a question of, can I do this? It was just like, no, I'm bigger, I'm stronger, I'm faster now.
Yeah.
Did you notice it at the time though, that resilience and that grit was stronger? Was it something at the time? Like you realized? Yeah.
The second time around, it was palpable. And it's interesting the difference between, the first time when I was diagnosed 2 years ago, it knocked me to my ass. You know what I mean? Like it knocked me right down, swept my feet up from under me. But my wife was incredibly stoic, incredibly strong, and, kind of held up the walls as they crumbled around me. Right. And she was so brave. And we were such a good team through those difficult times. And then a year and a half later, when we got the call that, there was problems again, the roles kind of reversed. I'd spent a lot of time working on myself mentally and physically and all that sort of stuff. And I got the call that, there's a problem again, and you're going to have to go in and do something similar to last time. We actually leveled it up a little bit more and did, a little bit more invasive treatment this time and all that sort of stuff. But I was ready for it. There was no, I mean, I'm not going to say I wasn't afraid, but I knew I was up for the challenge, and I knew I had the confidence because of the pre-work that I put in. I had spent a lot of time intentionally being uncomfortable, right? And intentional discomfort, prepares you for I messed that up. But when we front load, like I said, our lives, we're really prepared for those challenges when they happen. And, I got the call that, okay, your surgery is going to be on Monday morning. I think it was December 9th or something like that. The Wednesday before that, I ran 10K on the treadmill just to make sure my lungs were fit. I had a strong lift session, made sure I was, pumped up and ready to go and ready to step into that ring and do it and get to work. Right. And continue to, actively continue fighting for my life. Right. And the bounce back from that on the other side of that surgery was incredible. And I'm not saying that, as a, flying my flag here and look at me kind of a thing, because circling back to our original conversation, it's all teamwork, right? It all comes back to teamwork. We all have a role to play. My role in that situation was to be as mentally and physically fit as I could be for that challenge. That was my job. I focused on that. I did that. I know the medical professionals have their job. Their role is to go in and get the cancer out of my body. They did that. Lindsay's job as my wife is to maintain and run our family life as best we can with me on, in the hospital. She did that. Our support network had their roles of, meal trains and check-ins and shoveling our driveway or whatever the case may be. They did that. Everyone focused on their role. Everyone executed it. And guess what? I'm still here, right? So that's literally the end result of that, right? So everyone focusing on their role and the value of teamwork was, incredible in that. And I can't think of a more powerful example than when you're actually fighting for somebody's life, right?
Again, I love, it's interesting, like as you share, it always does come back to that, like that greater life lesson you talked about, like the power in surrounding yourself with a strong and powerful team.
Yep.
And it's really interesting because, the other thing which seems to be a theme of your journey is around this like resilience piece. And it's interesting, like how many of those life lessons did you take during those early morning skates when you were a kid, right? Where you're developing that grit, that resilience, right? To, hey, I'm going to push myself today so I'm a little stronger, more powerful tomorrow. And it's interesting how when you start to do that, I don't know, just you're just better able to face that adversity and like you said, run through the fear, right? Those feelings of fear are going to pop up, but just the ability, like you said, to lean into it.
Yep, absolutely. And to recognize that we have choices, right? And every day we're faced with thousands of choices, and it's up to the individual and that person on how they want to choose to react to those situations, right? And I had a choice to sit here and accept this fate and accept the stats that are presented to me and accept my situation and just take it. Or I had a choice to get up and fight back and take some action on that and make the most of the situation, right? Because, impermanence is one of the things that I've really sort of spent some time thinking about. And the fact is, we don't all, have a permanent space here in this world. We're here visiting, right? And, we're all going to be moving on to the afterlife at some point. So we got to make the most of, our time that we have here, right? And again, when you're face to face with your own mortality, that sort of puts that reality a little bit clearer while you're sitting there staring at that. So I had a choice to make. And, knowing that between you and I, we all have a limited time on this planet, right? So how are you going to choose to take advantage of the time you have, whether you have 1 year left or whether you have 70 years left? People don't always know that, right? So you got to take advantage of the time that you have and make those critical decisions on how you want to spend your time. There's no value, for me in feeling sorry for me and, worrying about why me and pouting around. That added zero value to my situation. So I don't give that any headspace or any time or energy, right? Because one of the things for me is I can handle, all the, the treatments, the surgeries, all that sort of stuff. I can even handle dying. I think I really struggle with, those that are left behind, when I die, whenever that is, right? That's what I really struggle with. So if I'm only here for X amount of time, whatever that is, I can't afford to spend that time, feeling sorry for myself. I have to spend that time investing in my kids, investing in my, the relationship with my wife, and investing in giving back to this community and everything through my job is in the fire department and all that sort of stuff. Because one of the things I've really learned is in life, all you can do is give. That's it. You know what I mean? You can't take anything with you to the afterlife. So all you can do while you're here is give and try to make those, around you better and lift them up, and that's really what, legacy is all about for me, is giving back as much as you can. So, when you're no longer here and you're in the afterlife having a good time there, your legacy lives on through the giving you did while you're on this planet.
It's interesting as you share, and the one thing which really drew me in when we first met was just seeing your love of family, right? Like I saw him, like that's just like a good dude. Like even before we actually had our first, I'm like, it's a good dude. Like there's an energy that I felt there, and just watching you with your beautiful wife and beautiful kids, it was just like, yeah, like that's someone who I want to talk with. So I'm curious from your perspective. I don't know if I shared this with you. I had a little bit of a health scare, different than yours in 2016. And I remember laying in the hospital bed because I was in the hospital for 4 days. And I remember, like you, starting to be like, what happens next time if I come in here? Like, am I really prepared to leave my beautiful wife, my 2 young kids? And I felt like I remember like really being in probably the worst sort of physical pain I've been in, but really starting to realize like I need to do better, like simple as that. Um, I don't know. I think that there's something interesting when you start to realize that I want better, I deserve better, right? My family deserves better. Like, I'm curious, like, what have you noticed has shifted in your life as you started to, I don't know, just like you said, it's about leaving a legacy. What have you noticed as your mindset sort of shifted around towards what legacy am I
Well,
leaving?
yeah, it's interesting, and and another kind of quote or statement that I like to think about sometimes is, we all have two lives, right? And the second one begins when we realize that we actually only have one, right? And once you sort of realize that, however it is that you get there, everyone kind of takes their own route to get there. But once you realize that, you see things through a whole different, lens and perspective, right? And that goes back to my other comment is all you can really do in life is give. And I'm laying in the hospital there, and you're thinking about all these tough situations, and you're scared and uncertainties and all that sort of stuff. And I realized to myself, I was like, I'm not done giving yet. I've got more to give. I've got more, more knowledge to give, more love to give, more whatever it is, just to give to the community and their kids and my wife and all that sort of stuff, right? And so now that I'm sort of blessed with, I guess, my third chance of sort of managing that stuff, I'm just so grateful and thankful for that. And I owe it to the team that has helped carry me to this point, to continue giving in honor of their hard work and all the work that they did to keep me here, right? So I have to just simply give back as much as I can to honor that work of the medical community, my personal network, my professional network, the strangers that have come out of the woodwork to help us, and again my incredible wife and kids, right? I have to honor the hard work and sacrifice they made to keep me here. So that's my role now in the team, is to live the best life I can and honor that work that they did by giving back at every opportunity that I have. And another quote that I love is, if you have the ability to give back, then you have an obligation to do so. And I feel I've really got a unique opportunity to give back. And so I'm more than happy to continue, pouring that back into wherever I can, right? Because that's, again, the importance of teamwork and showing thanks for and gratitude for the incredible work that people have done to keep me here. It would be, anything completely unacceptable for anything less than that, in my opinion.
I love that. And I love how, you're talking about giving. I had a great coach that talked about willingly give and graciously receive. And it was interesting that as you were sharing the power of giving, I was currently rereading Think and Grow Rich. And it actually talked about how actually from 40 to 60 is when men really start to be blessed with more abundance in their life. I think, abundance of health, financially, relationships. And I think it's like you talked about, it's, I think of my own life that in my 40s, I've started to be more about how can I give more? What can I do to help and serve others? What can I do to help and support them along their mission and their goals? And it's interesting how you said that when you get to that point where you just want to give as much of yourself, I don't know, life feels different. Has that been kind of your experience as well?
Yeah, 100%. Like it just, and that ties in with my career as well as a first responder, right? And all we're doing as first responders is giving back to the community and trying to make people that are having a tough day a little less tough, right? And going through and doing that for 15 years, you see some of the the hardships and the suffering and the trauma, and we give back in that way, and that's very fulfilling and rewarding from my perspective. And then when you're faced with some of these situations personally, it only adds to that, right? So I think it's just been such an incredible ride, and the lessons that we've learned from it have been so powerful, right? And I'm so grateful to be still sitting here today and having this conversation and really soak in those lessons, right? And it's as tough as it is, just because you face something challenging, it doesn't have to be cancer, it doesn't have to be whatever. I mean, take your pick. There's tons of challenges in life, but it doesn't mean that you can't live a life full of gratitude and abundance despite incredible challenges in front of you, right? And so often people sort of get lost and their thoughts and their minds, astray way off. But really, all you need to do is just bring it back to here, and ground yourself and be focused on what's in front of you right now. Because especially in my world, and I've done it, and I do it lots, is your head sort of gravitates off to the fear and the worry and the uncertainty of the worst case scenario. When really, if I bring it back to where I'm at right now and focus on what's in front of me right now, life is absolutely 10 out of 10. People ask me all the time, like, how you doing? And I say, hard 10 out of 10, right? And people find that sort of, I think sometimes people are like, oh, you're full of shit. Like, there's no way, you know what I mean? It's just like, well, no, that's the truth, that it's really, when I look at it, big picture, I've got a job that I find incredibly rewarding. My family is healthy and enjoy spending time with me, which is great. And now it's springtime, the weather's warm again. What's not to like, and when you focus on, the good things that you have in front of me, it just sort of adds that real, heavy dose of peace injected into your life, which, makes it wonderful, place to be at, and a wonderful way to sort of look at things. Right. And it's been wonderful.
It's interesting as you share that. I think back to what you were mentioning a few minutes ago, that you were blessed with a second opportunity of life. And now you said you're blessed with a third opportunity. And it's interesting how, like you were mentioning, like when you really remind yourself that the only guarantee in life is you're only guaranteed today. And that when you start to live from that place and start to understand, I'm just going to give my best today, I don't know, just life feels a little bit different. And I think you just have a different level of appreciation, gratitude, and feeling more blessed.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, there's nothing special about me. I'm the guy next door. I mean, I cut your grass around holidays. I'll move your garbage bins in and stuff like that. But every day, when I talked about it before, we have choices, right? You and I get up in the morning. I'm assuming we put our pants on the same way in the morning, and you get up and you have a choice. How are you going to live today, and what choices are you going to make to make today a good day? And you go through and you make those choices, good or bad, and at the end of the day, it's just you and the mirror, and you got to look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself the question, did you do your best today? Did you give it your all? And you deep down know the answer to that. And you're the only one that you have to face on that, right? So if the answer is no, you didn't give it your all, that's okay. Tomorrow's a new day, and you get to get up and make those choices again and try your best and try to be better. And if the answer is yes, you did give your all and did pour everything out there and leave it all on the table or in the rink or on the field or whatever sports analogy you want to use, then you can lay down at night and with a peaceful mind and recharge, right? Recharge, refocus, and reset for the next day and do it all over again. That's the beauty of life, in my opinion, is every day we get up and get that opportunity to make choices and to do our best, right? And continue learning and growing. And, again, when we have that sort of growth mindset, how can we get better? How can we improve? How can we keep, building back better and building each other up around us, right? Because, as someone who's reaped the benefits of a teamwork lifestyle for my entire life, I want those around me to be better too. And I want them to succeed just as the way, I've had success in my life. Right. So that's, sort of the beauty of, this wonderful ride we call life. Right. It's just such a magical journey, and, and it's kind of like a pendulum. Right. When I think about it, I mean, everybody loves, sort of being comfortable, right? We all love to, things are great. The sun's shining, life is good, life is comfortable, right? Inevitably that pendulum's going to swing to the other side, and there's going to be hard times. There's going to be tough times. It's going to be difficult, but the key is to not waste those difficult moments when they're there, right? Because that's where the most incredible life lessons are, because we know the pendulum's going to swing back and eventually life's going to be good again, right? So don't, take for granted or dismiss those moments of stress and discomfort and suffering, because like I said before, that's where all the key growth happens. And that's what's going to level you up as an individual and hopefully level up the people that are in your network and surrounding you, right, to that next level, right? So enjoy this crazy ride of life that we have, right? Because it's good to be comfortable, it's good to enjoy these things, but know that it's going to swing back and we're going to face those tough times again. But that's where the growth happens. So look forward and lean into those things, right? And take advantage of them and squeeze every ounce of opportunity out of those difficult situations, because man, that's where great lessons can be learned and great growth takes place.
So many valuable nuggets of wisdom there. And it's interesting that I actually thought of you yesterday. I had one of those moments where when I dropped the kids off, Tyler and I just felt like I could be better, right? I was leaving off and, in the past, I would have dwelled on that mistake. And, I reference like Maxwell Maltz, who wrote Psycho-Cybernetics, who talks about this idea, you make mistakes, you are not a mistake. And I know in the past, I would have beat myself up for how I chose or unconsciously acted there. So it was interesting when he came home, I said to Alicia, you know what? I'm going to take Tyler out for I'm traveling this weekend for work. And I just said, I'm going to take Tyler out for dinner, just cause. And it was interesting how just taking out for dinner, automatic shift, right? Like years ago, I wouldn't have made that. I just would have dwelled and felt sorry for myself. We're there, take him out, we have an opportunity to bond and, just eat. I don't know, his big thing now is Popeyes. I don't know why, but hey, he loves it. And then, it was interesting that before he was going to bed, he just came up and gave me a hug. And I realized that, if I hadn't have made the decision to be like, you know what, our family deserves better, myself included, that I might have missed out on this hug. So it's just really an interesting. So I felt like I tapped into you because I thought of you, and something unconsciously said, be like the great dads that you're surrounded by, like Lorne, right? So
Oh man,
share that with you, brother.
awesome. That's so great. And thanks so much for sharing that, because I mean that's one of the things that I've really learned along this journey too, is we often think of people who motivate or inspire us or whatever, and we go out and act on those things, but we don't always share that with that person, right? And it's great to hear those things, right? So I really appreciate you sharing that with me, because it means a lot, and especially coming from someone like yourself, who obviously I also admire and respect and try to learn from, right? So it's great, and that's what I really try to do that now. If somebody pops into my head now, or I'm thinking about them, and some of the things that they've done that have impacted me or whatever, I send them a message, and it's great the responses you get back, right? Because it can be simple as something, hey, you just popped into my mind, I want you to know you're really important in my life, and I think you're doing great. Hope you're having a great day, right? And it takes literally 15 seconds, maybe while you're driving down the freeway, steering with your knees, but literally takes 15 seconds. But the impact it has, on people on the other end is huge, because, I've gotten, lots of really, really wonderfully loving and encouraging messages over the last couple of years. And man, they've made a difference in some of my darkest of times, right? And you don't never know what people are going through, right? I mean, I always think about that. You're standing in line behind somebody for a coffee, and you have no idea what that person in front of you is facing, right? I mean, you'd see me walk down the street and be like, I have no idea what that person's gone through in the last couple of years, right? And it doesn't really matter. So, the reality is, if you just treat people with respect and kindness, and show them the love and gratitude for them being in your lives, and try to lift them up constantly, the payback you get is huge for that, right? And again, that goes back to what we talked about before. And in life and really all you can do is give, right? So give that person that message, right? Because I sent that one to a friend not too long ago, and they wrote back and said, man, that was so great, that made my day. I screenshotted that message. And for me, it was, like I said, a 6-second thing to blast out, but really that person lifted up at that moment, right? And that's great to know that they received that, right? And it helped them on their end too, right? So I appreciate you sharing that, because that's such a powerful moment. And I'm in your same boat. And as we learn this parenting journey, we're all first timers at everything, right? This is the first time I've had a kid in grade 2 and preschool. Tomorrow is going to be another first. We're all trying to learn as we go, and you're constantly questioning, at least I am as a parent, am I doing things right? And Lindsay often points out there's things I have that I can improve on, right? And I know that, right? But it's acknowledging that you're not perfect. You're always trying to grow with that growth mindset and get better and improve, right? And when you share those moments with your kids, and it comes full circle for them, and they receive and acknowledge it, i.e. by the hug that you got the other night, that's super powerful, right? It's not kind of the empty bedtime hug that you sometimes get because it's the end of the day. When there's meaning and intention behind it, gosh, it just feels so much better, right? So I appreciate you. I appreciate you sharing that. And that's such a normal everyday, kind of occurrence or action, right? But it's really, really, really powerful.
It's all good, brother. And, as you were sharing there, it just reminded me that, if it ended today and that was my last experience, like, how cool would that be? That my last experience was an uninitiated hug, right? Like, really, like, really when you strip all this stuff away, that's what life's about, right? Is
Well,
sharing the love with the people around you.
Absolutely, and that's yeah. Like I said, if that was your last thing, and in a cancer patient's world, when you face a near death experience, lots of times people are like, oh, my life flashed before my eyes, and right. With cancer, it's a slow, drawn out movie that plays before your eyes, and you get I've had time to sort of analyze, every point of my life and all the things I've gone through and all the decisions I've made. And when you're laying there not knowing how much longer you're going to be around, you know what I mean? When you get those diagnoses and stuff like that, it's a tough place to be in. So when I talked about before about front loading your life with great things, man, if you can reflect on your life in that specific time and think, man, I've done great things and I've had good impacts on people, and if that's the way I'm going to go out, gosh, that's a really, really peaceful scenario, right? And if you don't feel like that right now, then now is the time to act. Now is the time to change, right? And one of my things is I always say you're the author of your own story, right? So make sure it's worth reading. And if you had to sit down today, as the great JT, and if you had to sit down today and write your own obituary, think about this. Like if you had to write your own obituary, are you happy with what it says? And if you're not, be mindful of the fact that you're the one with the pen. So you get to change that narrative, right? But that's a really heavy question. I've asked some people that before, and geez, I've never really thought about it. And we'll start thinking, you're still alive, you still have the opportunity to write that obituary. So if you don't like what it says, then you better start writing and changing that story, because you're the one that's in control. And again, circling back to some of our other conversations, you're the GM of your team in life, right? So make those changes to your team and yourself that you need to make that narrative one that you're proud of and happy for, and a legacy that you're going to be leaving behind, right?
Absolutely, brother. So I want to be respectful of your time and your energy. So I'm curious, like, what's next? Again, as someone, I think from our conversations in the short time we've known each other in this 3D world, it's crazy how deep I feel like our connection is. Like, you just meet people, you're like, I resonate with that, right? Like they get
Totally.
it.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what's next for you on your adventure to greatness?
For sure. Yeah, for sure. I'm happy to share. Thanks for asking. Yeah. So the way my life works now is I have quarterly CT scans to check for the disease, make sure it's not coming back. So I kind of live my life in 3 to 4 month blocks. Short term, obviously, I've got long-standing goals and dreams and aspirations and whatnot. But so a few weeks ago, I had my latest CT scan. It came back clean. Everyone was happy with it. That's great. So I kind of get to put this gigantic weight off my shoulders down for a few months and get on to some fun things. So you'll appreciate this story, I think. And so what's next for us is okay. Let me think how I want to start this. So basically, if I back it up back to December when I had my last surgery, my second surgery, we were still in sort of the tail end of the pandemic with COVID, backlog of surgery issues, trying to book in for surgical times. The procedure I had back then was, it's very complicated, and there's only a couple people in the province of Alberta that can do it. And one of my original surgeons was off on sabbatical, so he's off the table. He can't book me in. The other surgeon I saw said, yeah, like, you're sick, I got to get you in here. This was in November. And he said, but I don't have any time until January. That's just the reality of our situation here. And so I understood that, I didn't, I wasn't upset. Obviously there was a sense of urgency because I wanted to get in there and get to feeling better. But I also respected that there's other very, very ill people as well that needed care and attention. So I was okay with that. So anyways, a third doctor was able to book us in and get some OR time, operating room time. And I found out later that, she was a real up and comer in terms of the surgical world and oncology and all that sort of stuff. So she booked me in for some time. And then the other surgeon came in, and then the one that was on sabbatical came off of sabbatical to come back. So I had all three of them there to do this magical procedure to keep me here in front of you today. The one doctor who booked me in under her OR time, she has since taken a job in Vancouver at the Vancouver General Hospital. So a massive win for that community out there to have such a skilled professional out in their realm. She subsequently was visiting me, in the coming days of, the surgery and stuff like that. And to take back to when we first met each other, the first time I met her, I was sitting on the table in the operating room. She walked in, looked me dead in the eye, and she said, "Hi, I'm Dr. So-and-so. How are you?" And I looked straight back and I said, I'm ready. Let's do this. And she said, without wavering and without a blink of an eye, she said, my goal is to get you cancer-free and home for Christmas. And I said, that's amazing. I have the same goal. We have very different roles on this team, but we're on the same page in terms of trying to get to that end goal. So it was right before Christmas. She went in, performed the surgery along with the others, and was able to achieve that goal of getting me home and cancer-free for Christmas, which was amazing. And it ties back to the front loading of, I had a quick bounce back because I was mentally and physically ready to go, along with the roles that everyone else was doing. While I'm in the hospital before I left, that surgeon, she said, yeah, I'm moving to Vancouver on Thursday. This was like a Tuesday. So she literally worked right up until she left. And she said, I'm moving to Vancouver. And I said, that's great. My wife's from Vancouver. We spend a ton of time out there. We always go for runs on the seawall. I'll keep my eye open for you. And she said, yeah, that sounds awesome. I'll look for you. And I said, actually, there's a marathon in May in Vancouver. Why don't I come out and run that for you? And she kind of looked at me with this look on her face behind her mask. And the look was kind of like, well, why don't you learn how to start taking a shit again before you're committing to running marathons or whatever, right? Yeah. So it was really funny. And she was right. I should have focused on the shorter term goals. But anyways, I've always sort of kept that in the back of my mind. And with the clean scan that I had a couple weeks ago, came home and Lindsay and I signed up. We're doing the half marathon in Vancouver. We're not doing a full. So we're doing a half marathon and we get to fly out this weekend to do that. So it's super powerful, super full circle, and ties into how you can sort of give back and honor those that do things for you. I get to hold up my end of the bargain this weekend by running that half marathon for her. So I sent an email to her and just said, hey, I'm holding up my end of the deal. If you want to meet at the finish line for a hug and a high five, I'll be there. She's likely busy saving other people's lives, so I don't expect to see her there. But that's what's next for me. I'm so excited and so thrilled to go out and run that. In honor of like I said, the work that she did to, help me be home for Christmas with my family and my kids and all that sort of stuff. So this is my way of giving back and showing her that her work matters and everyone else on the team that worked so hard to keep me here. So that's the next step. I'm doing that this weekend and I'm just so excited and so thrilled to do it. And we're going in with basically sort of no formalized training. I haven't done any real training for it, but again, living a healthy and active lifestyle, I know that I'll be able to complete it, and it's not going to be any harder than anything else I've gone through in the last couple of years. So it's going to be an absolutely beautiful pain that day. I'm so looking forward to it.
Such a powerful, what's next. I'm really enthused when we get to talk after to hear what, life lessons, what ahas you have on that run, because I know there's going to be a nugget of wisdom in there. So yeah, just really, one, I'm going to be cheering you on from afar. I'll be running with you in spirit, and really enthused to kind of hear again all the valuable life lessons you're going to take away from it. So that's awesome.
Yeah, awesome. I'm going to be running around with a sponge in my back pocket to soak it all up. It's going to be great.
Lorne, I really want to take a moment to acknowledge you. I want to acknowledge you for, the great man you are, the great husband, the great dad, the great friend, coach, mentor, but more importantly, the amazing human being you are. The one thing I've really taken away from our time together is just your ability to take it all in and to live. I know we talked about what unites like that neutral mindset, right? The ability to just take it in, go within, and just focus on what actually is required from you in the here and the now. So I just really want to thank you for being a shining light in my life and reminding me again the power of having that growth mindset and taking full responsibility in your life. So thank you for that, brother.
Awesome. And like I said, I so appreciate, the opportunity to come and have this conversation today and share some of our knowledge and lessons together. And, like I said, at the very beginning, I'm a firm believer that, the right people are in front of you at the right time. And our meeting on our holiday was awesome timing, because you shared that, that book on how to get to neutral. And it was so powerful for me because I'll share with you as you lead up to those quarterly scans, those are stressful times, and the skills and tools that you help me, learn and provide and uncover help me get through that, right? And focus on my next immediate steps and how to navigate another stressful thing and keep me moving forward in a positive light. And so again, it's, a mutually beneficial relationship we have here. I'm so thankful for, what you taught me and continue to teach me and the opportunity to keep growing and learning together. I think it's awesome. So thank you so much.
Absolutely, brother. And I'm just going to take a moment to receive it. So thank you. Appreciate you. So folks, Lorne dropped so many valuable nuggets of wisdom that will not only help you succeed in sport, but more importantly, in the game of life. But as I like to remind you every week in the huddle, knowledge is potential power. It's the consistent and focused application of great knowledge that actually creates great results. So my challenge to you is to take one of these valuable nuggets of wisdom and go apply it to your life today. And as I like to remind you every week in the huddle, you are deserving of greatness. You are worthy of greatness. You are greatness. And my only ask from these conversations is if it resonated with you, if it touched your heart, then please share it with a friend, a loved one, a teammate, or just someone you feel that would benefit from listening to this conversation. And the more people we have listening to these positive, inspiring, empowering conversations, the greater this world will be. As always, I look forward to chat with you next time in the huddle. Have a blessed rest of your day.